Okay, everyone is back. Okay, Tony, continue, please. Well, Carlota gets in.
Okay. Where was I? um, I think we were talking about that.
You were talking about the waste and you're putting some example of Switzerland, I
Yeah,
believe.
like $10 that to
And that's something that we can do as a society to, um, you know, how do you influence behaviors? And you guys have a great history of how to influence behaviors. I think the level of dissatisfaction with the things back in the 80s got to a level that you actually affected change. And that's how you actually can provide some level of behavior modification in the way people think. Because you can't tell people to think. People will think whatever they want. You can tell them all you want, but the only way you can influence it is by actually modifying their behaviors. And the way we found, at least in the U.S., how do you modify behaviors quickly? Is by punishing their wallet. You know, if it's going to cost me more money to do the same thing I was doing before, and it was not costing me that much, I got to think about it. And so, what are we doing as a society to start influencing the way people think about waste? I mean, how many times you see people throwing things out the window in the highway? And then you see, well, this part of the highway was actually fixed or cleaned out by this group, the Kiwanis or the KPMG, or that happens here in the U.S. Like, no, no, no. You know, punish the person that's actually littering, and we don't do that. We don't do that as much. So, how do we start looking at waste as a big source of a pain to environmental welfare? And we're not doing that. As much as I wish we could be doing it, we rather punish the source. We're not punishing the use. If you fly into New York City in the middle of the night, everything's lit up. Most people are sleeping. In fact, 95% of the people are sleeping. 5% of the people are awake, all the lights are on. Why? Why? Huh? Again,
Yes,
a lot of waste.
yes, I believe that it's like the same face of the coin. Maybe we have to improve all the production and to be sustainable and use in an efficient way our sources, but also we have to be a consumers, a sustainable consumer. So because it's not a great deal to have a clean source if I will use it in a really
Not better.
bad way.
In a
So
poorly manner.
yes, we need both to have a really responsible use as a consumers and also to have a sustainable production. And I believe that is a really interesting, and this is the way. And today I am thinking in your point, which will be the transition? So which will the fuel that we need to face the climate change, because we need it, and I understand
I
we have
think
it.
I think it's not going to be a transition. It's going to be because the same sources are going to exist in 2050. We're still going to have petroleum. We're still going to have gas. We're going to have a lot more solar, hopefully. We're going to have a lot more nuclear, hopefully, too. Geothermal is probably going to go up in certain places where you can actually get it. You know, the dams and stuff like that. Hydro. The thing about hydro and dams is that the source is up, you know, downriver, right? And not much happens in downriver. All the industry is upriver. So there's transmission losses. Electricity is you lose some in the transmission. And again, how do we optimize that? And we're always looking for optimization. We can't just like be like China and say, you know, you got 10 million people living here. Okay, tomorrow you're all moving and going over there. No, people, at least in the United States, we're free to do whatever we want. We can't have government tell you, hey, gotta get out. It only happens if there's a hurricane coming or there's a big threat. And even then, you have people staying. It's like, no, I'll stay. Yeah. So you telling me to leave my house? You kidding me? So our behaviors are very different than everywhere else in the world. And a lot of people like that. And again, it's going to take a while to influence people out of the behaviors they currently are exhibiting. And the easiest way to do it is punishing the wallet. Because that would release some of the funds that David was talking about. Well, how do we pay for this transition? Well, eventually we're all going to pay for it. And I think what's happening now is that people my age are saying, I don't want to pay for it. I want my kids to pay for it. They've had it easy. I had it tough. It's their problem. And that's a little bit of what's happening in this world right now. I think the people that are over 55 or 50 are saying, you know what, let me just live off the rest of my 20 years, 25, whatever I got left. Let me just like enjoy life and go around in my Corvette, polluting the earth. I don't care. And so that's the thinking. Now, from a Texas point of view, you go to New York, it's different. So that's why it's 50 different countries, right? And
Right.
and unfortunately, we have a president that's supposed to represent all of the 50. You can't, because everybody thinks differently. So, but like I said, the best way of doing it is by influencing behaviors is through the wallet.
Okay, I have another question, and it would be, how do you think the companies are going to change? Like, because I've heard that you said something about Chevron and Shell. Do you think that they are going to change, like stop producing oil and gas and start producing like solar panels and wind energy? Or how do you think they are thinking, like from here to, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years?
Great question. Every company is different. Every company is different. I know that Shell, first of all, is a multinational, is a global company, right? But they're based in Holland, and there is some UK capital from the British. That it wasn't a merger, but it's mostly Dutch, but also has a lot of capital from the UK. They think differently than Exxon. Exxon is all about petroleum. They don't give a rat's ass as to gas or electric. They don't know. They say, we're going to be the best at producing petroleum. And we're going to maximize, because our competition as Exxon, it's not Shell, it's not BP, it's not Chevron, it's the Arabs. And they can do it very, very cheaply and very, very fast, because all the reservoirs are just basically, very close to the soil. So they don't have to drill, and they don't have to find oil in the middle of the ocean where it's expensive. So Exxon has taken a radical approach and said, all these things are distractions. We're going to be focusing just on the production of petroleum. Okay. They found amazing deposits and reservoirs off the coast of Guyana, Suriname, those countries that nobody thinks about in South America, but yeah, they're there, right? And of course, it's huge. It's transformative in terms of wealth for Guyana. But given where oil is right now in the market and where it's supposed to be going in the next 10 years, it doesn't make sense to even go after that oil, because we got sufficient oil to power our needs right now. But going back to the question, do you think that in that chart that I showed of the United States and where we are with 7.5 billion people on the planet, and more people coming into the planet every single day, and unfortunately they don't come into the wealthy class, they come into the lowest class, right? How do we provide basically power and energy so that the lesser able can acquire standard of living that we can all profit from? How do you basically provide? It's a question I think that Alejandra was asking about. Electrifying Colombia. Well, my first thing was, well, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to bring power to people that don't have power? I mean, Brazil spent a lot going to the Amazon and trying to bring Indians, natives in the Amazon, to the standard of living of maybe not Rio de Janeiro, but probably Recife or something like that. And the Indians like, no, I don't want that. I don't want any of that. Get away from here. They would get like una cerbatana and blow like darts and stuff, like kill people. Yeah, they don't want that. They don't want to be colonized. So the question is, do you want that? And the answer is, well, it depends on where you are. I'm sure if you're you have 1.7 billion people, and you're forecasting to go to 2 billion people, you want that extra 300 million people, which is the size of the population that we have here in the US, to be better off than the average right now, you know? And you want basically that benefit for the society as a whole, right? And we've determined that if you give, you know, it used to be determined that the poor index was $1 a day in terms of earnings. You know, 85% of India lives under $1 a day. Well, how do you get that to be more than $1 a day? Easy. Give them electricity. Give them something. Give them a way to transact with the market. Give them a way, a window to the market, so they can actually sell a product or themselves as a service. It's the best way. And then how do you power that? You build a dam. You go nuclear. You get some wind. You get solar. Choices. Choices.
Yes, I'm completely agree with you about why we want to have energy, and second, what or yeah, which are our options to do it, because we have really different I don't know, ecosystems, social dispositions and requirements. So we need to understand each situation to provide the energy. And we are trying to do it here in Colombia in that way. Actually, we are trying to diversificate our energy basket, introducing solar plants like a new source of energy in our oil basket. And we are doing that, but we are still depending for the dams, because Colombia have, I don't know, 92% of, from hydroelectrics,
Yes.
and we have a little participation of thermal or coal and the new renewable sources. So yes, we are thinking like a country, and sure, we have to improve this 5%, because it's the only way that we can improve our I forget GPD, our GPD, because there is a lot of people
GDP.
that also GDP, sorry,
Yes.
a lot of people that also have or needs about health, about food, about transportation, and also there are the ways that here in Colombia we export the drugs. So the Colombia government needs to control that, and the way that we can do it is improving their life with another source of development, because now this is the only way.
So, and that's a great point. I mean, and partly the reason why I gave you guys access to that link, you'll find a lot of information that's great about energy. And that's the Energy Information Agency that belongs to the Department of Energy from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, I think it's called, EIA. But you have the sources, and again, you have the uses, right, or the other way around. Um, But if you look at, you know, if you look at uses, I don't know how well you have a map of Colombia, but it's usually those four categories. You have residential, you have commercial, you have industrial, and you have transportation. And the split here in the US is about 30% transportation, a little bit over like a third, 33% is industrial, 18% is commercial, and about 20% is residential. I don't know if that adds up to 100 or not. But the sources, how do you cómo alimentas a esa bestia? How do you feed that beast, right? Comes from coal, natural gas, crude oil, you know, petroleum liquids that are basically from natural gas, nuclear, and then renewable, and then and imports. We import, but we also export. So Those are the things that basically, and renewables doesn't even make it to the 12% in terms of that 100% bond. So we definitely have a lot of opportunity to grow. Nuclear is about, I don't know, 9%. What is it, 8%, 8.5%? But the majority is still crude oil and natural gas and coal. And so how quickly can we, turn the spigot off on those and start transitioning to the other ones? We're never going to eliminate it. Again, we need certain things coming from petroleum to basically live, right? We can't just we can get these and do away with drinking out of the plastic bottles. I think we can do that tomorrow. Yeah, maybe not tomorrow, but next week, right? We can start transitioning that stuff. But those behaviors, like I said, the only way you can start influencing them is by putting incentives in place or by putting penalties in place and monitoring the behavior of the consumers.
Hey, Tony, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Here in Colombia, according to the Ministerio de Minas, Colombia only has reserves of petroleum for 66 more years. And they want to implement the fracking.
Yes.
People that are very concerned about these environmental issues, including myself, and I think Alejandra too, we don't like this thing about fracking. So since you are an expert, and I appreciate everything that you have been telling us, why don't you illustrate a little bit more about this fracking stuff? Is it so damaging? Is so terrible for the environment? How is this fracking?
I'll be more than glad to tell you what fracking is. So my first question is, what is it that you don't like about fracking? Start with that. What is it that you've heard about fracking? You probably heard something that caused some fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
About the water.
About the water.
There's a lot of water, and then that water gets polluted, and what is going to happen with that water?
Right. Mm-hmm. So the answer is it's never very it's water intensive, yes. There are ways of treating that water which you can make it back into potable water. Early when we were trying this technology, basically what fracking is that petroleum usually, in the early days, there were pools of petroleum that under the earth. And what you did is you drilled and you tapped into that, and then you extracted by sucking. And you could only recover about maybe 40% of the reservoir. 60% was still there. So then we came in and said, why don't we just throw steam in there and let it turn into water, and oil floats because it's less dense than water, and then we'll recover the rest. Yeah, we did that. The steam flooding is called. And so, or water flooding too, depending on the oil, right? But we need water to do that because that's the way you separate oil from. And so where are we gonna get the water? We're in the middle of Midland, Texas, where it's arid, it's dry. Well, there's aquifers and there's rivers, and sure, we can divert, agriculture gets some, we're gonna get some too. It's not very intensive because the reservoirs are not very big, So let's do that and recover. Of that 60%, we were only able to recover about 10%, leaving another half of the reservoir full of oil. And then it became complicated because these reservoirs, they're called what they call tertiary recovery. So you got to now put steam and water and steam and generate a little bit more. And from the 50, you went down to now another 20%. So 30% was still there. And 30% is just basically, you got to go into tertiary recovery. It's expensive to do that vis-a-vis other options you have, like in the market, to import or to get it from somewhere else, right? And that's why Venezuela, and that's why all these other countries have a lot of petroleum. Now, you still have that petroleum. It's not going to go away. It's still there, but it's expensive at $40 a barrel, which is what's currently traded, $44, to actually go after it. You're not going to make money unless you're a national company and you're willing to invest in that, like the Saudis, for example. The Saudis is, you can get their oil for $10. It's cheap. It's right there. You can almost go strip it. So we've developed this technology called fracking. And what it is basically shale. Shale is una piedra que es como, tiene mucho aceite. I don't know the name of it in Spanish, But shale is basically a rock formation that's very rich in oil
Like una,
and gas. Huh?
like una concha, a shell?
No, 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 eso es shell. Este es shale, S-H-A-L-E.
Shale.
Sí.
I don't know how
Es,
to say it in English.
es una, ¿ah?
I don't know the word in Spanish.
Yeah, the word in Spanish, yeah, it escapes me, but it's basically, it's a very, mineral oil comes from that, and it's very rich in petroleum, right? And so you use this. So what happens with fracking is that we want to recover some of that oil and some of that gas, and it's cheap. And so when petroleum went up to $150 a barrel, it's like, hey man, we can go after this. Very, very interesting. Let's think about it. So the engineering and all the design went into actually, drilling and then doing horizontals, yeah. And then, like a rifle has a bullet, what you would do is get porcelain beads, and you would lo disparaban adentro del pozo. So what you do is you fracture the shale rock and allow for conduits to get into the well. And so you would extract the oil. Now to do that and recover, so initially you would recover without having to do any kind of injection of water, yeah? But as it gets more difficult because of the flow of oil is not as easy, then what you do is you would inject water and an agent called frac or mud, frac mud or frac water. And you would do is basically inject that and recover some of the oil. Now, initially, we didn't know what we were doing. So like trial and error, there's a great story about the people that developed the French guy that came over here and started DuPont, one of the biggest chemical companies in the world, DuPont. And DuPont used to kill a lot of people. They used to make gunpowder, pólvora. And they had these plants making pólvora for both sides of the Civil War in the United States, the Yankees and the rebels and the Confederates. And they would sell it like crazy, but they weren't running their plants very, very well. And every other week, they would kill a whole bunch of people because the pólvora, poof, caught fire and then exploded, right? So DuPont got really, really concerned and he said, you know what, I'm a French, I really care about my fellow citizens. Let me put a safety system, a mechanism, so I don't blow up people. And today, the safest plants you can actually walk into are DuPont plants. That's the culture. They made a dedication and effort to say, hey, we're gonna do this right. So what was happening with fracking initially is that we were wasting water, we were causing tremors because we were fracking with a lot of power and boom, and then you collapse the rock and guess what? There's Oklahoma City, temblando como si estuviéramos en, ¿no? So that's concerning. And so we said, no, we gotta get our engineering hat on and we gotta do it right. So like the analogy I made with Apollo, how many rockets we blew up before we got Neil Armstrong to the moon? It was 3 of them. And so we had a lot of accidents, right? So we learned from those accidents. It's like the shuttle. The shuttle, we had Challenger exploded on the way up and Columbia on the way down, right? Over Texas and Louisiana. So we learned from those and we learn what happens, gets in the way. And yeah, there's corruption, there's all kinds of stuff. But in the end, we're humans. We learn from our mistakes and we try to make it better. So today, fracking technology in here in the US, by far, very, very safe, very, very good. And we have a way of recovering the water that we actually employ to get fracking so that we filter it out and make it potable or reusable. So, but going after shale is very, very, I mean, the dynamics have to be right. It's usually a break-even proposition. $30 a barrel will get you to actually frack. And if the market goes below 30 bucks, stop fracking. You're wasting time. So.
Wow, thanks.
Yes.
But
Very good.
I want to say something about this fracking, and maybe here in Colombia we have 2 points. First, the risk related to this technology is too high because our ecosystems are not really understood. So we have a really biodiversity associated or related with these areas when we don't want to do fracking. So we don't know which will be the effect of this technology over these ecosystems. So as a Colombian, maybe we don't want to have the risk to lose this kind of environmental services, because we don't know which will happen with this technology. And second, the knowledge that you have in United States of this technology will be here maybe in 10 years, because our technology transfer is so slow, and it's a fact. So maybe we can understand and learn a lot of the things that you have there in 10 years, when our ecosystems are really polluted, or we don't have it. This is the risk, and this is the point. We are a development country, so we don't have this kind of technology to understand our ecosystems, and this is our point. And also about corruption, we know that we have a lot of corruption. Our environmental agencies are so weakness, because they don't have the amount and the quality of professional that we need to be overseeing and ensure that everything is going like we want. So it's a lot of I don't know to say incertidumbre. Sorry, I forget the
Yeah.
word.
Uncertainty.
Unknowns.
Okay, so to
Well,
achieve it, or
on those
to
issues, I mean, the only two things that I can tell you, well, let's start with corruption, because that's endemic on any kind of development, which the United States actually, we're still corrupt. We just, we have rules around how you're going to be corrupt, but it's a very corrupt country. We have lobbyists that influence basically senators, and there's a lot of money involved, but it's the way it works. And it's transparent. You know exactly how much money they're getting, how much campaign funds they're going to. And so there's ways of going about corruption to not make it corrupt, make it transparent, because the money is going to be exchanging hands no matter what. A great actor just died yesterday, Sean Connery. He made a movie called The Untouchables. The Untouchables was about getting Al Capone. Al Capone was very corrupt, mafia, and in Chicago, untouchable. He was untouchable. Yet they figure out a way through accounting. They talk about the KPMG, right? How to get that person, yeah? And they put him in jail. That's it. So you have to figure out, be more intelligent than the corrupt people, and figure out a way of enacting that through regulations and laws. The other thing I'm going to get to is Darwin. Darwin wrote a book, The Evolution of Species. And it's a very noble thing that we all evolve and we all die, right? But is it more important for the human species to evolve, or is it more important for other species to evolve on behalf of the human species? And that's a fine line. I can't be the judge of it. But if you're arresting my development as a person, as an individual, because you want to save a periquito, que nada más hay un bosquecito, I have an issue with that. I don't want to kill a periquito, but I want to arrest the development of the society, which might also arrest the development and the welfare of the society in advance of technology, in advance of thinking, in advance of. So, and you know what? It was easier to be said when we only were about 2.5 billion people, but we're on our way to 8 billion people. And so how do you provide the same level of welfare, not better, through technology, and take care of the periquito? So again, it's a very interesting challenge, and it's something that we have to consider very well. But in the end, we had an issue, I think, when Ernesto was here studying in the university. And by the way, that's a very good way of transferring skills and capabilities. Have your citizens come study here and work here en un programa de internship o estagiado, ¿no? I don't know how you say it in Colombia.
Internado, sí.
Internado, exactamente. And you acquire a lot of, my father studied in, I'm Cuban. My father left Cuba. He went to University of Tulsa in Oklahoma. He became a petroleum engineer. And he knew about fracking. And he studied back in 59, 60. And then he went back to Cuba with the revolution. So that's a little bit of me. But that's a good way of transferring skills and capabilities and bringing them back to the country. But going back to Darwin, that whole thing, is how do you make the call? How do you make you're going to arrest the development and welfare of a group of people that are your same species because you're protecting something that's going to evolve and die anyway? I don't know. Like I said, when Ernesto was here and I was here, remember the Reagan years, and there was a spotted owl in Oregon and Washington State, and the lumber industry wanted to keep on growing and advancing how much lumber they were going to plant to make furniture, to make houses, to basically provide for humans to keep on their welfare with bigger houses and stuff like that.
I think our biggest challenge right now is to figure out the way how the periquito can survive and how we can evolve at the same time, how we can really get a better welfare without killing the periquito. That's our biggest challenge right now, I guess.
And I don't have the answer for you.
No, no one has, but we have to figure out. That's our challenge for as a human race.
Yes. And it's a delicate balance of a challenge. And it's something that I don't want to just decide because I can change my mind tomorrow. So
people would like to save the periquito.
You could, but if it's going to be on saving the periquito in his natural habitat, because you're putting at risk now 30,000 people to move into this place and create a market of opportunities and welfare and the jobs, then you say, well, wait a second. So the Reagan compromise was the spotted owl became basically something that was moved. They attempted a couple things, and at the end they said, you know what, done. So the spotted owl became a species in extinction, basically. We have different owls, but not the spotted one anymore. So that's Darwin.
Okay.
The survival of the species. Guys, I'd love to keep on going, but I really have to go and have lunch now with my family. So I don't know if I answered any questions or maybe for you guys. I hope it was something that gave you an exposure to the energy challenges that we have as a species and as a country too, and giving you some tidbits of what we're doing here in the US in terms of facing that challenge, but recognizing it is a challenge, and also the political will that we can actually reflect, and how do we actually get people to start behaving differently so that we can all survive.
Yes, Tony, thank you very much. It was really interesting.
Okay.
I learned a lot. We learned a lot. And as usual, 80 minutes is not enough. Maybe in the future we could have you again with some other of the students because it was a long weekend. And
no problem.
The patient was very low. But anyway, thank you very much.
Be more than glad.
Okay, Alejandra and David, please.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you very much.
Really interesting conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I will like to continue arguing about this another time. Thank you very much.
Yes.
All right, guys. Enjoy it, huh? Have a holiday.
Okay.
Great, see you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye, David.
Bye, Alejandra.
Bye, Ernesto. Thank you. Ciao.